Welcome to the Botanical Biohacking Podcast. My name is Andrew Miles. Today we're going to talk about herbs for pets. As long as people have been taking herbs, they've been using them on their pets. Animal trials show us that what works for them tends to work on us and vice versa. There are minor changes, of course, but basically we're working with the same system. From imperial horses to modern degree programs in China and Taiwan specializing in herbal veterinary care, using botanicals for pets has been a thing for thousands of years. There are plenty of mundane stories about animal breeders using herbs to make famous horses or flocks of sheep. These are a bit lame and not as engaging, so I'm going to give you a more dramatic, historic account of how herbs changed the tides of war. You may notice that I've done this before. Well, I'll probably do it again because seriously, it's kind of awesome and it stresses the importance of botanical medicine not only for personal use, but for larger emergencies that tend to befall humankind. The torch has been passed from antiquity until the present moment, and as it goes into your ears, the legacy moves into your hands. There is something so beautiful about how this connects us to ancient people and provides a sort of cultural continuity. Today we're going to go back in time to the Song dynasty. In 1114, there was a war at the border of what would later be called Manchuria. This Siberian-Manchurian region was controlled by the Jurchen, who had a culture much like the Mongols. They were known as horse people. The Chinese cavalry was going against people whose livelihood depended largely on hunting and reindeer herding. This region of the world is one of those frozen hellholes you only return to if your family is still living there. Today that area is famous for ice sculptures. If something's famous for ice sculptures, it's unfit for human habitation. It's exactly these kind of places that produce Mongol hordes, Vikings, and Russian mobsters. It's a tough area of the world. To eke out an existence, you have to be smart and strong and resilient to the point that you're a little bit savage. So imagine that you're far from home, you have to fight horse people on horseback, and now all of your horses are sick. It's a pretty bleak situation. But this was the situation tens of thousands of soldiers found themselves in on the frontier. It was a perfect recipe for career burnout. And this is the kind of burnout that results in a painful and feverish death from an unsanitary arrow. When you think of arrows flying through the sky, what no one tells you is if you even get nicked by one of these things, it's not like that they come out of a sanitary package. They probably got pulled out of a dead carcass of an animal, and then it's going into you. So you're definitely at least going to get a fever. And what a way to go out. No bravado, no beheading, just shivering in a bed in some cold camp far from home. Not fun. In the night, as soldiers were probably asking themselves what could be worse, the worst happened. There was an unseasonable downpour of rain, and a disease began spreading among the war horses. A famous veterinarian named Chang Shun was appointed to figure it out. He examined the horses and after a few days determined that it was parasitic in nature. He suggested an external wash combined with internal herb consumption. The generals looked at him and said, "You want us to wash 10 to 20,000 horses?" So Chang Shun got creative, and he made a small river out of boiled herbs. They ran the uninfected horses through the bath first to prevent further infections, then bathed the infected horses and treated them with internal herbs. Several days later, the horses were cured with very few deaths. This allowed the Song army to easily march over the Jurchen, whose horses were not faring so well. The emperor heard the news and gave the veterinarian Chang Shun the royal title of Marquis with lands and estates. The local people even built a temple for him and worshipped him, and the devotion continues to this day. Every year in Shanxi and the neighboring provinces, people come to pay their respects to Changshun. At a distance of 500 meters, government officials must dismount or park their cars. Regular people will remove their shoes as they approach. They walk to the temple. The officials pay their respects first, followed by the ordinary citizens. Changshun was the only veterinarian in Chinese history to be made a marquis and worshipped at a temple. This is how important his contribution was. One of the herbs that was used in this bath is actually an herb that we use every day in our clinic. It helps to prevent parasitic infections, and also it's very antifungal. So whether it's used on horse hooves or human feet, its ability to prevent parasitic and fungal infections remains the same. I looked up the most common ailments for horses on the old Google, and it turns out arthritis and digestive complaints are among the top. I also looked for dogs, and it seemed that arthritis and digestive complaints ranked pretty highly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a formula for arthritis that's commonly used for pets. I'm not saying it's particularly good for Uncle Bigglesworth or whatever your pet's name is. That's up to your vet, up to you, up to, the bones when you throw them down and determine your future. I don't know. I'm just going to present the information. It's not medical advice. Don't send me to jail. This is simply information. Enjoy it. So the first formula I want to talk about is called 杜火鸡香, which you probably forgot unless you've already studied Chinese medicine. But we'll just call this Arthritis Formula A. This formula is used in dogs quite a bit. It's considered a very gentle formula, and in humans it's generally used on older people. It's both nourishing and pain-killing. It's anti-inflammatory. It has immune regulatory effects, and this is really important because a crucial aspect of wound healing, pain response, and arthritis has to do with immune factors and the balance of these immune factors, and this has been shown to help regulate these actions. It's antibacterial, dilates blood vessels, and improves circulation. So if you think about a garden, if it doesn't get irrigated, if it isn't watered, then it doesn't do very well. The same can be said about our body. If our circulation is poor, then it's very hard to heal. So this helps to dilate the blood vessels, and it also increases blood vessel formation around joints. It has a slight blood thinning effect to improve circulation, much like aspirin, and it improves coronary blood flow, so the blood circulation to your heart can increase. Here's where it gets a little bit awesome. It protects and regulates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis to make sure that the hormones are in balance and ready to heal. This allows your body to reduce stress and increase its own growth hormone and anti-inflammatory steroids. So you go to the doctor, you get a prednisone shot, it just takes out the inflammation right away. Well, our body has similar hormones that it can use to reduce inflammation. But as we get older, as we get into a weakened state, that hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis doesn't work as it used to. So this formula takes that into account and regulates it. Now this formula sounds like a panacea good for everybody. Not so. If you or your pet have cancer, are pregnant, or on blood thinners, probably not a good idea. But on the bright side, it does protect and repair the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. So this formula, 杜火鸡香, may be hard to remember. Don't worry. We're going to provide a link in the show notes. You can click on it. It'll take you right to Google Scholar so you can see research on it for yourself. Now, in the past, what I've done with older arthritic dogs, this dog, it was my grandparents' dog, Molly. I'd grown up with Molly, just the most adorable border collie you've ever seen. As she was getting older, she had arthritis. She was limping around in the backyard. So I gave her this formula, and then I also burned an herb called mugwort. This process is called moxibustion, and I did this on her lower back. And she went from arthritic limping to sprinting within hours. Moxibustion is a beautiful and expansive topic in its own right, and I hope that we can have some experts that focus on that come on the show and talk about it a little bit. If you're curious about moxibustion, a great book I would recommend is called Moxibustion, The Power of Mugwort Fire by Lorraine Wilcox, and we'll provide that in the show notes as well at botanicalbiohacking.com. So now, on to digestion. A few years back, I was visiting a friend, Xiaojun, in Monterey Park, California. If you've ever watched the Discovery Channel and you've seen a Shaolin monk putting a spear to his throat and pushing a car with it, it's probably him. He had a kung fu school in LA. A lot of people who he was teaching were in film, and so he got into film as well. Film, commercials, this kind of thing. Currently, he's doing business in China because being on TV in America is a bit overrated. It's much better to have longer-lasting prospects. Xiaojun was given a beautiful German Shepherd puppy, but he really didn't know what to do with it. He grew up in the countryside near the Shaolin Temple, where dogs tend to have patchy fur, eat whatever they can, and stay chained up for protection. These are countryside dogs. They're not even working dogs. In areas where people have lots of sheep, you might have sheep dogs. These dogs are purely for protection. They're kind of like guards you might throw a bone to every so often. So they're kind of rough beasts. They aren't pets that love anyone, and it's dangerous to go near them even if you're a family member. So his approach to caring for his dog was to dump old noodles in the backyard. My lifestyle at this time involved flying back and forth to China every couple of months. But in any case, we took the dog under our care and named her Osa, which is Spanish for a lady bear. She gained weight under our care, but her digestion was always spotty. And I think this had to do with her noodle and bone diet, which is not exactly recommended for puppies. Maybe we're just being wusses about it. But it didn't agree well with her, and she got a rash, especially in the summer heat. She was itching like crazy. She would get these rashes and also tended to have diarrhea. So in any case, we ended up with her. He knew he couldn't really take care of her, so he gave her to us. She became an inside dog because she's adorable and we couldn't tell her no, and she has an amazing temperament. Everybody loves her. But if you've ever had a dog with bad digestion, you know how it can just be horrible on your carpets. There's some surprises you just don't want to come home to. To help her out, I cut down her meal size, and this helped a little bit, but every few weeks the diarrhea would return. I started to give her some basic digestive pills mixed in with her food, and those would kind of work for a day or two, but really weren't strong enough. Finally, I got her on a formula called Shenning Baiju, and over the course of about 3 days, it brought her back to normal, and she's remained that way. This formula is wonderful for digestion, and it's used in people for digestive control and fat loss. I've used this quite a bit for weight loss with patients, so it's a formula I'm pretty familiar with. It's originally from the year 1078. It was in the pharmacopoeia of the Song dynasty. It regulates gastrointestinal movements, improves metabolism, and boosts the immune system. In small doses, it can excite intestinal movement. In bigger doses, it can inhibit the contraction of the intestines and increases the absorption of water and minerals in the intestines. It increases the levels of creatinine, uric acid, and urea nitrogen within the urine of patients with chronic gastritis, colitis, and stomach or duodenal ulcers. It also reduces the secretion of gastric acid and promotes urination. It's generally best to take before meals. Originally, it was taken with Chinese date soup, or it was eaten with a rice soup to help increase the assimilation and make it easier on digestion. Generally, it should be avoided with tea or with daikon, which is the Chinese or Japanese radish. It's better to avoid it while taking different medications for colds. People with hypertension, heart or kidney diseases, diabetes, or pregnancy should take it with medical supervision. It's not for people with diarrhea associated with constipation or heavy feelings in the anus. You know who you are. So to recap, if you come across a Jurchen army and you find that your horses are getting sick, you may want to make a river out of herbs and run them through a bath. If your dog, horse, or best friend has arthritis, you may consider mentioning Du Huojisheng. And if your dog is completely destroying your carpet through no fault of her own, you may consider Shenling Baiju and take some for yourself if you want to lose a little weight. This concludes the podcast episode. Remember to rate and review on iTunes or Stitcher. And remember that this month, everyone who rates and reviews us takes a screenshot and sends it to us at botanicalbiohacking@gmail.com. Will be entered into a drawing. We're going to draw one name randomly. If that name is yours, you will win a bag of enlightened tea. This tea is so relaxing. I think I'm going to take a nap. You will be the proud owner of said tea, God willing, or goddess, as the case may be. And at the end of the year, one winner will come with us to Sichuan to check out the herb fields, hug a stranger, and bask at the glory of my friend Jolie.